Welcome. I'm going to do the best I can here today. I'm at the tail end of having the flu for a couple of weeks. Last Saturday, I had a class and I kind of petered out halfway through and had to stop. So let's just know we'll make it. All right. So today, as far as I'm concerned, we're officially starting our spring semester. Of course, tomorrow, the days are longer because we turn the clocks forward tonight, and March begins spring, and we're kind of in the middle of a warm spell here, so it's the perfect time to start our spring semester anyhow. My theme for this spring semester is, if I can see it, I can be it. If I can see it, I can be it. You should be writing this shit down. If I can see it, put it in your phone, do whatever the fuck you have to do, because you'll forget in 2 minutes, you know you will. I want to talk about one of the things, if you've been coming for a while, you hear me talk all the time about consciousness, consciousness, consciousness. Everything is consciousness. And of course, we always have the issue with semantics and words, and they mean different things to different people at different times. So consciousness is not really the perfect word. So we're going to make an attempt today to clarify it, make it a little bit more clear in how this all works. I think that we started hearing in the culture that word consciousness in the 1970s, because we started hearing about the consciousness movement and raising consciousness. And so what was meant a lot of during that time about consciousness raising was really what we would call vibrational lowering, because it really wasn't raising what we think of as consciousness. It was raising awareness. So if you think of consciousness as just awareness, right, I'm conscious of that, I'm aware of that, then it was certainly making people aware of certain things. But it was not raising what you and I in New Thought think of as consciousness, which is our vibration, our consciousness being the paradigm under which we live. So the reason that it really was not consciousness raising and it was really vibrational lowering was because all of that consciousness talk was negative. So it was all really about how bad things were, how minorities were mistreated, how things were not right, how people didn't have equal rights. All of that kind of stuff was really a pointing out of the problem. And we live in a culture that is wildly mistaken in thinking that the way you solve problems is by pointing them out. And the way that things are made right is by complaining about what's wrong. And this is sort of the history of humankind, is that if we just complain and point this out, things will get better. And everything in real consciousness points to the contrary. That it actually is, the more that we complain about things, the more they are locked into place. And so everything that we do here, that's why years ago, when I first started in the 1980s doing all of this stuff, one of the many teachers that I was studying with was Louise Hay. Louise Hay was doing, at that time in West Hollywood where I was living, something called the Hay Ride, where every Wednesday night she would have this huge gathering of really anybody who wanted to come, but it was primarily for people who had AIDS and HIV and their family and friends and caretakers and people like that. At that time, there was really nothing you could do. There was no medications. There was still, if somebody came to see you in the hospital, they put on a hazmat suit. So there was nothing being done that was of any help at all, except for this sort of spiritual support that Louise Hay was doing. And what she would say at every single meeting at the very beginning was, we are here to take a positive approach. We aren't here to play Ain't It Awful. So even though she didn't speak that much, she gave a short little talk at the beginning and then turned the mic over to people in the room. And it was mostly sharing and her sort of guiding people a little bit. But there was you were not allowed to complain. Like she would just start out saying every single week, we aren't here to play Ain't It Awful, because that won't get us anywhere. Now, Louise Hay, this wonderful little book, The Science of Successful Living by Raymond Charles Barker. Raymond Charles Barker was Louise Hay's first teacher. So Raymond Charles Barker had the religious science church in New York that Louise Hay found. You know, when somebody sort of said, you know, Louise, you're very negative. And that's why you're having all these problems. And would you meet me at this religious science church for the noon meeting? And so she said, okay. So she went to the noon meeting and the person never showed up. So she ended up going to this noon meeting by herself at this religious science church in New York and never turned back. So that's where she became a practitioner. That's where she did all of her studies. And eventually she took over that noon meeting at that religious science church. And so her foundation really is in religious science. And so that was her thing, was anything can be healed, but it cannot be healed by us joining together and commiserating about how awful it is. So we're not going to talk about ain't it awful. We're here to take a positive approach. And so that's really what all of this is. And sometimes I think people forget that in New Thought. And it becomes more of a social movement, and people get involved in things that are actually taking them further away from the real core of what New Thought is. You know, Robert Osborne from TCM, the host of TCM, passed away this week. God, I love that man. And I feel like I'm sort of the Robert Osborne of New Thought. You know, Robert Osborne never talked about, you know, I don't even think, from the things I've read, he didn't even see new movies. He just talked about all those old movies. So he was always introducing those old movies. And that's me. I just talk about dead authors. I don't give you 2 fucking cents for any of these New Thought authors, not one of them. Most of them are severely mentally ill. I know, I've met them. So I'm always talking to you about all of these dead authors who were in their right mind and who stay to this pure New Thought teaching. And so a lot of times in New Thought, it's become a place where broken people come and never get better. And that's not what's supposed to happen here. This is a place for healing. This is a place where we wake up. This is a place where we come out of the hypnotism. And so a lot of the things in the world that get drug into New Thought have no place there. I mean, it's fine, but they really have no place there. Politicizing things, all of this stuff. So we want to take a look at what works and what doesn't, what helps and what doesn't. And just really, to the best of our ability, let's just stick with what works. If you just keep doing what works, you're okay. Makes sense, right? If you just keep letting go of what doesn't work, the only thing that's left is what does. So exciting. So this idea then that consciousness is really a paradigm. We've talked about this before. It bears repeating over and over again, that one of the things that we used to hear, certainly when I came into New Thought, they would talk about change your thinking, change your life. But that's not really so. And it is misleading in a way, because what a lot of us thought and what a lot of us are sort of led to believe in the beginning is that if you just change a thought, if you just affirm something different and change a thought, then it will change your life. But that really is tantamount to Jesus saying you cannot put new wine in old wineskins. Because a lot of times what we're trying to do is just take 1 or 2 positive thoughts and put it in an old thought system, an old paradigm. And it doesn't work. It's the entire paradigm that has to shift. So it's not usually just one thought that's causing a problem. It's a whole worldview that has to be changed. It's a whole way of seeing things. You can't just take an affirmation like, I'm abundant and wealthy, and put it into a paradigm that says, wealthy people are selfish, corporations are ruining this country, it's not fair, I'm on a fixed income. That's a paradigm. You can't put a couple of new thoughts into a paradigm and have it do anything at all, except piss you the fuck off. So it's the whole paradigm that has to shift. And you don't change a paradigm by complaining or even marching on Washington. Marches are wonderful for the people in the march, and that's it. They don't change anything. They don't do anything to the world or the culture or the paradigm at all. They're wonderful pep rallies for people in the march. So in that sense, they're good for that. But if you're doing it thinking you're changing things, you're not. You're just preaching to the choir. You're just further alienating the people who already didn't agree with you anyhow. So when we think that the way that we change the world is through action, we're already insane. It is through consciousness that we change the world. That's why people like Gloria Steinem did not change the world at all. Had almost no effect whatsoever on the culture except people who already agreed with her. You know who changed the culture? Who was probably someone who would not even have called herself a feminist, but probably changed the culture more than anyone in American history? Mary Tyler Moore. Because she changed the paradigm. You understand? She shifted the paradigm without ever preaching to anyone, without ever complaining about anything. But she shifted the paradigm because if you can see it, you can be it. Do you understand how many millions of young women saw Mary Tyler Moore, and because they saw it, they were able to step into that consciousness? If you cannot see something, then you're going to have a very difficult time being that. Doesn't mean you have to physically, tangibly see it in the world, but you have to at least see it in your mind. You have to be able to see in your mind what you want to accomplish, who you want to be, the life you want to live. And that's why art, more than anything, shifts the world. And that's why so much of the art that we see that thinks it's changing things is not changing things. If you're seeing movements about slavery, you're not changing the culture. If you're just pointing out how bad things were or how bad things are, you are not changing the paradigm, and you are not creating a vision for anyone to step out of something into something else. Now, this year at the Academy Awards, if you saw, and I can't remember the name of the movie, but the 3 African-American women who worked for NASA, that is a culture paradigm-changing movie. Because even though it's from the past, it was so unheard of, so many people did not know about that so many African American or Asian or whatever can see that movie now and say, oh, look what's possible, look what someone did, I want to do that. Because you are not pushing against anything then. You are instead looking at what you want, because that's how consciousness operates. Whatever you're looking at, you are aligning yourself with vibrationally. And if you are aligning yourself with it vibrationally, you are moving closer to becoming that, whether you want it or don't want it. So that's why we want to keep creating things that make us feel good when we see them. That helps us move into that space, right? So I get excited when I see things like that, where you see, oh my God, you look at that and you go, there have been transgendered people for years and years and years. Do you know that A Course in Miracles would not even probably exist the way that it does if it were not for a transgendered person who gave this piece of property in Mexico, that this person had read the manuscript for A Course in Miracles. This transgender person, I can't remember their name anymore, and I can't even remember which way they were going. Doesn't really make any difference. They went from one sex to the other. and found this manuscript and sold this piece of property in Mexico and gave the money to the Foundation for Inner Peace to print the initial hardbound versions of A Course in Miracles. So that was, back in like 1970, whatever, 6 or 75 or 76. So there have been transgendered people around for a long time. Why are there so many more transgendered people now than we've ever heard of before? Because of television. Because of these TV shows where they started to have transgendered characters. Because when you see something, that's the importance of that word that we hear all the time, visibility. Because what you want to do, whatever your dream is, whatever your vision is, whether it's for yourself, for your community, for your culture, for your country, for whatever, what you need to do first of all is normalize it in your own thinking. It has to be normalized in your own thinking. So, in other words, if you want to experience abundance or success in your career, you have to normalize that in your thinking instead of thinking of it as a fluke or a miracle or some amazing thing that would happen. It has to seem normal. You get that? That you must start to speak of it in a normal way. You must think of it in a normal way so that you're not anymore thinking in terms of, oh, wasn't that an amazing miracle? And I remember years ago hearing Abraham Hicks say, by the time your dreams come true, it will seem like no big deal. By the time your dreams come true, it will seem like no big deal. Why is that? Because by the time they come true, you've been vibrationally moving towards it for a while so that you won't feel the way you thought you were going to feel when you were very far from it vibrationally. You understand? When it was way far away, you thought that you would just lose your mind when that happened. But by the time it happens, it's not that big a deal anymore because you've been vibrationally upping your vibration all along the journey so that by the time it happens, you're like, of course this happened. This is what's supposed to happen, of course. I've been going in this direction all the while. It makes sense that I would arrive here. I've been heading in this direction for a while. That's why a lot of times people who have some big windfall, like the lottery or something like that, oftentimes lose it, is because they were not vibrationally ready for it. And because it felt like a big fluke, they did not have the consciousness to hold it. They didn't have the paradigm to hold it in. They're trying to bring a lot of new money into an old paradigm. Then they got more money, more problems. Instead of more money, more fun. Right? That's what we want. More good, more fun. Because you've vibrationally been preparing. You've been vibrationally laying the tracks for this. So that you want to more and more be envisioning your life, expanding in the ways you want it to expand, and literally seeing that happening. Seeing that happening. That means turning away more and more from your story about how that's not possible, how it's going to be a lot of hard work, how so-and-so is going to be upset, how maybe it's not the right time. One of these things in this little, let's read from this, The Science of Successful Living. I love this little book. Isaiah could stand in the midst of the exiled Jews and say, "Look unto Zion," because he knew that if he could get them to think of Jerusalem instead of their exile, they would return. Return they did, for his counsel was taken, and as a result, the demonstration was made. Like these people of olden times, look at what you want. Talk in terms of what you want. Consistently believe that what you want is now taking place through the action of the law of the Spirit. So that means stop talking about what you do not want. Stop focusing on the guilt of a president. Stop focusing on what you don't like in the economy or the culture. Start talking about what you want. You know what is interesting? The people in this country who are between the ages of, let's say, 2, 3, 4, up to 18, for all of those people, it is absolutely normal and natural to have an African American president. That's the world that they inhabit. You understand that? That's a paradigm. That's a paradigm shift. In other countries, like England, it's not a big deal to them to have a woman leader. First of all, they had the Queen for many generations now. She's 975 years old. So the Queen's been there for a million years. Certainly back in the 70s or 80s, they had Margaret Thatcher, right? So for them, it's no big deal. For us, it's a bigger hurdle still until we've seen it once. Once you've seen it, that's it. You have a different paradigm then. That's the thing where you see this with Olympic athletes and sports people, where for years a record will go unbroken. And as soon as one person breaks it, that same month it's broken by a dozen people. You understand that that's how consciousness and vibration works. But whatever you're focusing on, that's what you're getting more of. So if you're focusing on, it's too late for me, I'm of a certain age, I live in this particular town, things are the way they are. Let me read some things from my telephone. These are letters I've gotten from people here. Call this bearing witness. This is a couple of emails I got. This is the first one. Dear Jacob, thank you for getting me pregnant, and I mean that literally. Obviously, we did not have sex with each other, but you are the biggest reason why I sit here and write you 7 weeks pregnant. I'm a single 47-year-old. I make a decent living, but by no means am rolling in the money, but I am so joyful. This journey has taken me a few years, and I've been going to you religiously in San Diego and LA for about 10 years now. Through your lectures, I realized my deepest number one dream was always to be a mom, but as the years rolled by, this dream felt less attainable, so I tried not to think about it as much and all but stopped talking about it out loud. About 3 years ago, after I learned the eggs I had frozen in my 30s were no longer viable, I was devastated and thought my lifelong dream to become a mother dead. And then I remembered we don't care about the form of things. I emailed you, and you said that you trusted that I will become a mother one way or another, but not to get hung up on the form. So I put in some applications to adopt through the city of Los Angeles and intercontinentally in Haiti and Nepal. Then you did a lecture about limiting beliefs and the stories we tell ourselves. Mine was that I'm too old, too single, and don't make enough money to even play with the idea of raising a child. You said that if it has happened for another person on the planet, then why could it not happen for us? I reminded myself that lots can happen, and what do I know? So I marched to the mirror and told myself, I'm on to you. And I promptly met a 48-year-old single woman pregnant with twins. Then Janet Jackson had a baby at 50-something. So right here, this is it, right? When you see someone do something, it is not the preaching and complaining and speech making that changes things. What we see changes things. If we can see it, we can be it. Giving speeches about what's wrong and what we're against does nothing positive ever. So I dove deeper into the adoption options, but nothing was panning out, and I did not get too hung up on it because I knew that she could come in many different ways. I had a few 40-something friends successfully do donor embryos, so I tried that. I had a miscarriage in October, and I honestly did not despair like I thought I would. What I did was prepare. I continued to prepare for my child in little ways, and I talked about her. I wasn't afraid to talk about her coming. I did not know how she was coming, but when in the interim of joyful expecting, you told us to prepare. I cared for my body like I was pregnant. I ate healthy things and made sure I got lots of sleep. I let go of some real workaholism. I was glowing like I was already pregnant. I did a second embryo transfer. This time I didn't tell many people. I went in there, just me and Source, and it worked. I'm so happy and so grateful. I know this isn't the end of the story, but I'm so full of joy that dreams can continue to come true, that I am not done. Thank you, dear brother Jacob. Your influence on my life has been profound. So she began to see the evidence. She began to look for the evidence of what she wanted instead of looking for the evidence of what she did not want. That's that Louise Hay thing of, I am no longer interested in things that will upset me. I'm no longer curious about things that will upset me. Stop Googling shit. All right. Demonstrate what you want. Don't talk yourself out of your good and permit no one else to do it either. We do this. We talk ourselves out of what we want. There's a woman in my Monday night class who really wants a relationship, but she's been talking herself out of one because it's better than the disappointment. I'm this many years old. I'm set in my ways now. I don't know if I would want to sleep with somebody every night. I really like my da-da-da-da, all this stuff. Instead of creating it the way you want it, you just create it the way you want it. Relationships are not government issued. People make up their own relationships. If you want to sleep with someone every night, who the fuck cares? Do you know how many married people do not sleep in the same bed every night? But if you think, well, I have to have one of those government-issued relationships, right, where we have to sleep in the same bed and be monogamous and have sex in the missionary position 2 times a week, right, or all this stuff. There are people who there are married people. I saw this great thing on, it was 2020 or one of those shows. It was a while. It was like 10 or 15 years ago. And it was about these non-traditional relationships where people lived in different states. They were married for 20 years and lived in different states and only saw each other on the weekends. And they were like, because you hear long-distance relationships don't work. That's just a fucking limiting belief paradigm. Has nothing to do with reality. Nothing to do with reality. Whatever relationship works for people works for them. So there are people who'd lived in different states for 20 years and saw each other just on the weekends. Happy as fucking clams. There was another one that was like the Brady Bunch. This was fascinating. It was a woman and a man who each had 3 kids, like 3 girls, 3 boys. They met each other. They fell in love. The kids didn't just hate each other. They would violently beat the shit out of each other so that it was violent, bloody emergency room visits. So they were like, well, should we just forget it because it's not going to work and we can't, and they've been to therapy? No. They built a house in a V. In the corner was where the mother and father had their master bedroom. Then this side was his family. This side was her family. They each had private entrances, separate kitchens, and the kids never fucking saw each other. The mother would just go over, spend time with her kids over here. The father would spend time with them. Then they'd come to their bedroom at night. They made it work because they had a vision of what they wanted, and instead of focusing on why it won't work, why it's not normal, stop trying to be normal. You know you're not normal. There's no such thing. Just be natural. What you want to be is natural, not normal. Do you know what's normal? Insanity. That's what's normal in America. What's normal in America is to have a medicine cabinet full of antidepressants, anti-anxiety, stuff for your digestion. That's normal in this country. You don't want to be normal. You want to be natural. What's natural for you? And so might be, I have friends who are in a throuple. So here's this woman who's saying, God, I don't know if I would want to sleep with somebody. And I have 3 friends. They all sleep in the same fucking bed every night. And they're all huge. Like these great, big, tall people that all sleep in this bed every night, madly in love, the 3 of them. Happy as clams. Because they decided what they wanted and what worked for them. Be natural. That's what's natural for them. Or you can just say, well, it's too weird. Let's just make do. Let's just sell. Let's just die a little bit every day. But at a certain point, you just go, why am I trying to live for the fucking neighbors? Right? You know Dan Millman? Dan Millman, who wrote The Way of the Peaceful Warrior. This is so funny because I was looking for this quote. This quote is, "The secret of change is to focus all your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new." Have you ever heard that before? It's a great quote. I've heard this a lot. The secret of change is to focus all your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new. So I didn't know who had said that, and I was looking for it, and I didn't know the whole thing, so I was trying to Google it, of the parts that I remembered of it. It took me a long time to finally find it. And it was so funny because it just shows you how, why you shouldn't really trust the internet. Like why I say, stop Googling shit that upsets you because you don't even know if it's true anyhow. For instance, half the shit that you see that Buddha says on the internet, you know he never fucking said that shit. So this particular quote then came up as having been said by Aristotle. But you know why it says that? Is because the lead character in Way of the Peaceful Warrior, written by Dan Millman, is Aristotle. So the fictional character, Aristotle, in Dan Millman's book said this, but all across the internet, it just says that, Aristotle. Right? You know, there's that quote, our deepest fear is not that we are limited, but that we're powerless beyond measure. And that was widely quoted, as having been said by Nelson Mandela. And it was from Marianne Williamson's book, A Return to Love. And it's not that, he quoted it. He never said it. She asked him personally. Marianne said, "Did you ever quote me?" And I always think, what moron thought he said this? Because who imagines that Nelson Mandela said, "You're fabulous"? Does that sound like a Nelson Mandela? What straight man says fabulous anyhow? But the idea that Nelson Mandela said, "You're fabulous," is so moronic. So that's why even when we're looking at all of these things that upset us, half the time they're not even true. Half the things that we get outraged about, that we see on the news or here or there, wherever, that we start them pushing against, aren't even true. I'm going to read from this Joel Goldsmith book, Living the Illumined Life. We've talked about this a lot, but he says it so good. Living the life of resist not evil. On all sides today, it is said that it is impossible to live the teachings of Jesus Christ in this life. One of the reasons it seems impossible to most persons stems primarily from Jesus' statement, "Resist not evil." In this age, it would seem that if we do not resist evil, evil will do something terrible to us. Of course, the record of thousands of years shows how religiously the world has resisted evil, with everything from bows and arrows to atomic bombs. And with all this resistance, from what has it been saved? Not a thing. We have been resisting evil until now we have warehouses full of the greatest arsenal of weapons the world has ever known, and the fear is just as great, the anxiety is just as great. Resisting evil has proved to be a failure. So this is, we even have now, this is why I would say, I was religious, and then I let go of that, became spiritual, and then I realized that was just bullshit too. Now I'm post-spiritual. The spiritual people are the fucking worst. If you ever meet someone that says they're spiritual, run for your fucking life. You're better off with a room full of atheists than the spiritual people. The spiritual people are the fucking worst. Nobody loves to fight like spiritual people. They are ready to fight. We're gonna fight. Right? So you say, resist not evil. There's even, all this stuff now. #resist. It's insane. What you resist persists. Resist not evil. Agree with thine adversary quickly while thou art in the way with him. So people hated it when Jesus said it. People hate it when I say it. Fuck you, I don't care. That's how it goes. I ain't here to make friends. I'm here to tell you what the principle is and how this shit works. And it works if you're willing to let go of being one of the good guys, because you're not. There's no such thing. I fight for the underdog. Fuck you. There's no such thing as an underdog. If you believe you're fighting for the underdog, separation. Separation. You are body identified, you believe. See, this is the whole thing, is when you stop. First of all, once you let go of being a human being, you're free. Because you're not. You're not a human being. There's not anybody. That's the last thing on earth that you want to identify yourself as. Because if you are a human being, you are bound by the laws of limitation. You are a divine creature, period. That's all. That's why you are not bound. That's why you can do that lesson in A Course in Miracles that says, I am under no laws but God's. But if you think you're a human being, then you are not under no laws but God's. You are under the laws of medicine and all of the bullshit of this plane. The only way out of that is to change your paradigm. I am not a human being. I am a divine spiritual creature. I have been many things. One of the meditations, this was so hard for me to do back then because I was not ready. But in the 80s, when the first things that I ever really heard of Louise, this was before I had even been to see Louise Hay. And I had just moved to West Hollywood, and my roommate had this Louise Hay cassette tape. And I don't even know, I never even saw, I don't know where it was from, because everything she's ever done you can usually still get from Hay House, but I've never seen this again. But in this meditation, she kept saying, what she would say is, I am nothing in particular. I am nothing in particular. I am nothing in particular. And that was so terrifying to me, as it is when you're coming from that viewpoint of wanting to limit yourself through labels. Because I had spent up till that point my whole life trying to be somebody. What do you fucking mean I'm nothing in particular? I've been spending the last 20-some years of my life trying to be somebody, trying to step out from the crowd and be somebody. You should be somebody. And then here's somebody going, you are nothing in particular. Well, see, I didn't know at that point that's the peace of God. What destroys the peace of God is being somebody. That's why you don't have the peace of God, is because you think you're a somebody. For many years, when I first started lecturing on my own, the format that I used at the beginning for quite some time was the same one that Marianne Williamson had used, because I had spent a lot of time with her. And one of the things that she did, and I did this here when I first started here in like 1999 or 2000, where I would come out and say, introduce yourself to the people around you, in front of you, behind you, to your right and to your left. And after a couple of years, when I started really evolving in this understanding, I stopped doing that because I realized that's what ruins everything, is once you introduce yourself to somebody, you have to be somebody. That the reason that people feel so much peace in rooms with me is because you don't have to be anybody for once in your life. You get to just sit there, and there's nothing required of you. There's not going to be a group song. You're not going to have, you just get to, and certainly in the evening groups, it would be like the lights would go down, and you could just be nobody. That's where your peace is. Your peace is in being nobody. See, this is what it's hard for Americans to get. Your peace comes from being nobody. Your torment comes from being somebody, because that's a defense. Here's who I am, and I have to defend it and sell other people on it and make sure it's consistent and that people treat it in a certain way and think of it in a certain way, right? That they want to hire it, that they want to pay it, that they're friendly to it, that they think it's nice, that they like it, that I have to be this somebody. And you can tell how much of an investment you have in that if somebody diminishes what you've done or says your name wrong. Like if somebody calls me Jason, I just go, whatever. Because I don't give a shit. You know, people, you call me Hazel. I don't care. I don't relate to a name. That's not who I am. I'm not a name. I'm not a sexuality. I'm not an age, right? I don't need you to respect me. I have boundaries, right? But they're not based on if you treat me a certain way, it makes me feel a certain way. You understand? That your freedom comes in being, this is all of those beginning lessons in the workbook of A Course in Miracles are about letting go your attachment to the meanings of things. Oh, this means this, and this means that, and this means this, and this means that, and this means this means that. Instead of recognizing, none of this means anything except what I say it means. Doesn't mean anything except what I say it means. So the peace of just being nobody and nothing in particular. Like it doesn't make any difference what anyone's saying about you, what they think about you, any of that. You're not defending anything. People can take credit for your work. They can blame you for shit, and you're just like, good for you. Right? Good for you. You might clarify and say, well, that's not true, but whatever. It's so wonderful when you realize, this was one of the reasons why we did the Byron Katie work so much, was the recognition that let people think what they want because they will anyhow. Like wisdom is so fucking obvious. Where it's like, let them think what they will anyhow. Oh, yeah. Like, you thought you could force them to think something? You know how, you think, haven't you noticed, once you just realize that this is all the most common sense. It's uncommon on paper, looks ridiculous on paper, but if you just look at your life experience, you can see. Can't we all see the more you have tried to control somebody, the further they have slipped from your control? Can't you see that the more rules that you have set up to make sure that they do what they're supposed to do makes absolute certain they won't do anything they're supposed to do? Haven't you noticed that? Okay, I'm not going to ask anymore. I'm going to tell you how I want it done. I want you to call me at 4 o'clock and tell me it was done that way. You will never see that person again. They have left town with all your money. I always think of Debbie Ford. God bless Debbie Ford. The late, great Debbie Ford. She, God, I can't even, I would have even, sometimes I think, do I make this stuff up? But this was in the fucking newspaper. And Debbie Ford, who was a friend of mine who I had come here and talked to us, and who wrote The Dark Side of the Light Chasers and all of this stuff, I can't even remember, but this was after, I don't know if I ever even saw her again after this, but this was right after maybe the last time that she'd come and talked to us. And I was because I remember Patty was there. We were in the bookstore at the old place, and Patty and I was in the newspaper that Debbie had. And this is why when you think, I can control this, and because I do it in a certain way, it's going to work. And especially if you go, well, I'm going to get the top carpenter who has the best references. So she got this amazing top carpenter. Now, Debbie lived in La Jolla, and rich people all use the same fucking people. I'm sure everybody in La Jolla goes to the same fucking dentist. So it's like that. There's the guy that does this, and there's the person who does that, and there's that. So there was some guy who did all the houses in La Jolla. And so Debbie wanted her kitchen remodeled, and she was going on a book tour or whatever. So she's Gave him the keys to the house. They talked about the remodel on the kitchen. I want some granite countertops and da-da-da, new window, whatever. She goes off on this book tour, and she's paid the top guy in law. Everybody's worked with him. He's amazing. He's so fantastic. He has this great reputation. He da-da-da-da. When she comes back, this was in the paper. When she came back, her entire house was gone. He had razed the house down to the fucking foundation. The entire goddamn fucking house was gone. Which is when she then found out that the guy was a crazy crook, allegedly. That he didn't own anything in his name, that all of his property was in Mexico and in somebody else's name, and he ran off with all the fucking money, and she came back to no house. But this is like, what you do when I know how to control things, I know how to make shit happen, I know how to get the this and get the done and da-da-da-da. And that's why, when you talk about these things, it sounds insane until you think about, remember that time it all looked good on paper? Remember all the times it really looked good on paper, and I was absolutely sure that this time I was not going to be screwed over because I had all my ducks in a row. And then they wiped out my fucking ducks. Right? They slaughtered my ducks. And it was easier because they were in a row. Easy to find my fucking ducks in a row. You just killed them all like that. Because it seems nonsensical, and yet it is the most common sense of all to say, I'm going to let the same power that holds galaxies in place run my life. Instead of my day timer and my strategy, my, Dr. Phil life strategies, I'm going to surrender. So let's read now a letter like that. This is from another long-time listener. Good morning, Jacob. I would love to share with you some good news. I wrote you an email late last year, which I never sent, because this is like one of those letters to Jacob thing. I really just needed a reason to write out what I was wanting. The gist of the email was that I was cleaning out my closets and downsizing and donating all items that I no longer needed. This was inspired by you and your donating so much of your stuff to prepare for your move. I was preparing to make myself available to move together with my fabulous, perfect for me, hot, sexy, and confident girlfriend. I love how she says this because she says, perfect for me. That's what you want. You want a mate that's perfect for you. Perfect for you. That might be someone who, everybody else would do a big hard pass on. Okay? You want someone that's perfect for you, right? Not someone to impress your relatives, but someone that's perfect for you. All right. Because this is a lesbian. Perfect for me, hot, sexy, confident girlfriend into this new perfect home for us. We had discussed that living together would be great, but were unsure of how we could make this happen. She currently lived with her identical twin sister and their 3 golden retrievers. One is her dog, and the other 2 are her twin sister's dogs. She didn't want to leave the burden of finding a place with 2 big dogs on her sister, which I completely agreed with. The sisters are also very close and enjoy living together. Oh, and I have a 17-year-old cat, too. She was commuting to Irvine for work from their Carlsbad house as well. There were so many variables which would seem that the move couldn't happen until many things changed, animals and jobs and such. So I just began to clean out things and act as if I was getting ready to move. So you see how this is what we're talking about, right? You have to see it. If you can see it, you can be it. But you don't. But if you're waiting to have everything line up in the outer world, you have to see it. You have to have the vision of it without knowing how. How is not your part. You don't know. I don't know how the fuck my car works. Gets me here. I don't care how it works. I just am on a need-to-know basis. Change the oil, put in the gas, that's it, you know? All right. I began to clean out things and act as if I was getting ready to move. I even packed a couple of boxes and stored them underneath my breakfast nook to remind me to stay on target. My girlfriend started taking my donations to the Goodwill for me when she'd come to visit. She didn't inquire why I was doing this, but she's a neat freak and probably was just turned on by the fact that I was cleaning things out. I rid myself of 3/4 of my clothing, miscellaneous dishes, and kitchen gizmos, even cleaning products and extra shampoo and such. I just kept what I knew I loved and needed, which was still a good amount of stuff. The very day after I cleaned the last closet, did you get the order of that? The very day after I cleaned out the last closet, the logistics of my girlfriend's job changed, and she was told that she could work remotely from home and just come to the Irvine office twice a month. My good friend let me know that he was closing one of his 2 senior care facilities in the Tierra Santa, San Diego, and turning it into a rental home. Her sister also got news from her landlord that they needed to survey the property and were going to sell the Carlsbad home that she and my girlfriend were renting. I let her know about my buddy's house. The 3 of us checked it out while still under remodel and realized it truly fit all of our needs, and voila, now we all live together and it is just great. The house is completely remodeled with new tile floors that are perfect for the 3 big dogs, brand new carpeting in all 4 bedrooms, new tiled bathrooms with new vanities and fixtures, stone kitchen countertop and new stovetop and sink, reverse osmosis water, yard, gardener that comes 2 times a month, and we are 2 blocks away from the Tierra Santa trailhead to Mission Trail Parks, which is just wildly beautiful, and you can see stunning views of San Diego, ocean, sunset, so cool. Oh my God, and it's just so quiet here. I have my very own little office in the garage with windows and brand new carpet. It has shelves for all my knickknacks and looks like a very cute gypsy den and wine office now. She has a wine office because she sells wine. I mean, I would have one just for scuzz, but she sells wine to restaurants and stuff. I even have a TV in there and my favorite chair. A friend was moving to a smaller house and gave us for free an 800-bottle wine storage Vino temp that fits perfectly in the garage. I built a bar in the garage that's fully stocked with beautiful teakwood cabinet, butcher block, and Vitamix blender, and mini fridge outside my office door. It's pretty cool. I'm so happy. My girlfriend and her sister have their own office in the house as well. We have a guest room too. The cat is living comfortably in the master bedroom for now, and she's very happy as well with a window that looks out to the backyard and bird feeders. And it is costing us all less money to live here and live so well. I could go on and on about how perfect this place is and that we were able to rent it with 3 big dogs, a cat, and no pet deposit. Oh, and this is the first time I've lived with anyone other than just me and my cat for over 18 years. It's been really great for me. We all get along so well. There's plenty of space if I want to be alone. The twins are fantastic people that I truly love, and it's almost like getting 2 for 1, a girlfriend and a great friend. I love to cook and now get to do that in a real-size kitchen that is really nice. Okay, that's my loving life report now. This shit works, Jacob. It really does. Thank you for all the tools and encouragement and knowledge. I practice every day in so many ways, and I see so many great things happening for me all the time. You are very appreciated, and I'm grateful for all you continue to teach. Again, let's let the power that holds galaxies in place plan our move, expand our business, create our health. All of these things require, though, our vision of it, our not pushing against unwanted, but instead looking and saying, if I can see it, I can be it. If I can see it, I can be it. And that then becomes, that's why, I get so excited about the things that I see on television now that represent something for people to move into, right? Instead of somebody that's pushing against and shows that are complaining about, oh, look how unfair this is, look how awful this is, look how dark this is, look how hopeless this is, look, because all you get is more of the same. It doesn't actually change anything. People think that by pointing out what's wrong, people come up with solutions. They don't. It's by creating something new and presenting that as an option. So again, I can't even tell you how many people I've heard over the years, and particularly because Mary Tyler Moore just died recently, how many people in that said, I watched it and that's when I thought I can be da 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 da. Certainly the most famous one, Oprah, always talks about how Mary Tyler Moore, that's how Oprah ended up working in a newsroom, was that she saw Mary Tyler Moore, and she said, I would sit there and set my hair on Saturday night watching Mary Tyler Moore and thinking, that's what I want to be, that's how I want to do, that's who I want to be, right? Not everybody in that, it's like if you look at some of the people on those, even like Rhoda was just a throwback. There was nothing new about Rhoda. Rhoda was just another woman who was desperate for a husband. There was no new paradigm there. There was nothing really great about Rhoda. What was good was the friendship between Mary and Rhoda. That was the only thing in there that was really positive. But Rhoda might as well have been someone from the 1950s. She was no different than something we'd seen a million times, some woman who feels incomplete without a man who's just desperate to get married. I have to have a date. I need to get married, right? And Mary was saying, you can have a very rich life without being in a relationship. You can date, and your family are like the people at work, all of that kind of stuff. Even if you look at shows like All in the Family, did not change anything because all it did was curse the darkness. But there were shows that came from that. What was something that came from that shifted things? The Jeffersons. It wasn't Good Times. Good Times was still more of the same hopelessness. This is all you can hope for, is living in the projects, limited life, struggle, the man is against you, you're never going to make it. The Jeffersons opened a new door where people were, the great line and what's interesting is Marla Gibbs, who is a religious science practitioner. You know Marla Gibbs, who played the maid in The Jeffersons? She's a religious science practitioner. So she's been in religious science for many, many, many years. But her line in the first episode of The Jeffersons was because, of course, in the first episode, you had, they'd moved to a deluxe apartment in the sky, right? So they'd moved out of the suburbs into this luxury apartment, and across the hall was what? More paradigm changing, an interracial couple who were very happy and hot for each other. Right? So here's Marla Gibbs, the maid, standing in the middle of the four of them, and her line was, "How's come we overcame and no one told me?" Right? That was showing this is going to be different. Something new is happening here. This is not just making fun of same old, same old. See, satire doesn't change things. It just makes fun of what you disagree with. That's all it does. It's wonderful. It's like a pep rally of people who think just like you do, laughing at something. Nothing new happening there. So nothing wrong with that. Doesn't change. It's not paradigm shifting. It's not consciousness raising. It doesn't raise your vibration. It's just lateral move. Makes you feel good that you're the way you are. Well, here people think like I do because we're right. We're on the right side of fucking history. You don't want to be on the right side of history. You want to be on the leading edge. You want to be constantly on the leading edge that's reaching for what's new, what's next, what is more limitless, what is more life-giving, what has a more, this is Ernest Holmes talking about, it's open at the top. You want your life to be open at the top, right? So you look at things like the Jeffersons, that opened the doorway to, you can prosper, you can do well. You don't have to be living in the projects. Like, we're being represented. This is what it would look like. And then young people and people of any age then start reaching for that, just like this woman who, and then I saw a 48-year-old woman who had a baby. Then we saw Janet Jackson, 50-something, having a baby. That creates something new in your mind of what's possible for me, without going into the nightmare of, but how will I make that happen? All that does is put, because you don't know yet. If you knew, you'd already have it. If you knew how, you'd already be there, because you would have done it. So that's not your part now. We are on a forever need to know basis. Expecting that doors are going to keep opening for us. I never knew how I was going to get somewhere that I actually got to. Places that I thought I knew how I was going to get there, I never got anywhere. Because there are too many variables, too many other people involved who could say no. But when you just say, I'm just going, I don't know how I'm going to get there. I've decided. I want you to say this. I've decided. I've decided. I've decided. Do you know how powerful it is to say, I've decided? You can change your mind. Right? But a lot of times, you can vacillate about something for years on the fence. And then once you make a decision, the energy starts to move right away. And so you may change your mind then. Like you may spend 20 years thinking, maybe I should start my own business. I don't know. What would it be like? I kind of would like to. I'm sort of afraid to. I don't know. What would my sister say? She's always making fun of me. You can do that for 20 fucking years. Then one day you go, I've decided to open my own business. And then 2 days later you can go, well, this is a fucking nightmare. I'm not doing this. It moves things faster, right? You can do 20 years of sitting on the fence where in 2 days of having decided you go, boy, I fucking hate this. This is not for me. But making a decision moves the energy forward. Wondering and hoping and wishing gets you nowhere. Right? That's why I say, again, spiritual people are often too wishy-washy. If it's God's will, I don't know. We'll see. God doesn't give a shit. That's what you have to understand. There's no God who's going, you're going to be an accountant. There is no God like that. That's not, right? That's Santa Claus. That's religion. There's no God. The universe is just saying, what the fuck do you want? Just make a move. We're behind you, whatever you say. Right? Just go for it. Even if it's the worst idea in the history of humankind, we're on it. Right? Because the universe just says yes. It doesn't judge. It does not judge. There's just energy moving. There's just circulation or lack of circulation. That's basically all there is. How dare you, Joel? All right. Well, let me make sure I get this all in here. I was thinking recently about when Robert Osborne died, it was like a really good friend of mine died. Because for a lot of years, that was somebody that was in my everyday life. So at 5 o'clock, West Coast time, Robert Osborne would come on and, introduce these old movies. And I had grown up with old movies because my parents were old. My parents were like 2 generations older than me. They were the age that my grandparents would have been. And so I was used to old movies. I grew up with a lot of old movies and really related to, I relate to Downton Abbey. That feels like my time period. I know that's weird. In fact, for a while I was referring to myself as Lady Grantham. And in fact, a month or 2 ago, I was at the Starbucks in West Hollywood and she was there. And I walked up to her and I said, Lady Grantham, what are you doing standing in a line? She said, I know, where's my butler? So I have always related to sort of that old time, And so for a lot of years, because Turner Classic Movies came on in 94, 95, so during those late 90s was really such a horrible time in my life. From really 96 to 2000 was just a shit show of my sister died and my mother died and my father died and my grandfather died and my oldest brother had a diabetic stroke, was in a wheelchair for the rest of his life, and that was just the highlights. That's just the really huge stuff. Then there was a whole shitload of other little stuff. So every day, and I lived really in isolation except for just going once a week to Santa Barbara to lecture. And so every day at 5 o'clock, Robert Osborne would come on, and that was I just felt like I'm okay. Right? He's going to soothe me into some old Betty Davis movie or whatever. And so I'd been around a lot of death my whole life. So from the time I was very young, because I grew up in a very small town and had classmates that died in high school and just death everywhere, and a lot of grief and a lot of sadness. And I would say that now I have an enormous amount of grief and sadness. But here's the deal. This is what I would present you with in terms of what our teaching gives us in terms of consciousness, is what we were taught, many of us, when I came into this movement, was you can process your feelings and you'll work through them and you come out the other side and you da-da-da-da-da. And what I have found is that is horse shit. There's really no such thing. Just as I've said, when people say, oh, you'll never get over someone dying, well, of course not. It's not a cold. That's the wrong language to say you get over it. You're not going to get over it. It's not a cold. You get over a cold. Oh, I had a cold, then I got over it. You don't get over the death of somebody. But you also aren't stuck in that place of grief, because grief and sadness are just ingredients in the well-stocked kitchen. So they are always there. If you have rage and anger and sadness, they're not going anywhere. You're not going to get rid of them, nor would you want to. All you do is activate something else. Do you understand? In a well-stocked kitchen, you have everything. So you might have paprika and this, that, and the other thing, and you might hate paprika. Then stop putting fucking paprika in recipes. That's all you do. You don't have to say, I'm going to process this paprika out of the kitchen. I'm going to have it legally removed. I don't think paprika should be allowed. There's something wrong with paprika. You just stop putting fucking paprika in your recipes. Do you understand? I have rage, and I have sadness, and I have grief, but I don't activate them. They haven't gone anywhere. What do I activate? Joy, gratitude, the peace of God. So that's what dominates my life, and that's what all my pies are filled with. I don't put a lot of grief in my pie and then go, what's wrong with me? Right? In fact, this eye, those of you who were around a couple years ago when I had this chalazion in my eye and I had to go have surgery on it twice and all this kind of stuff, that basically is like blocked forever. So I don't cry anymore. Because if I cry, this is bad. It just, so when something happens and I feel like I'm going to cry, I'm like, we're done with sadness now, turn on the comedy. And I don't say, oh, you're not processing your emotions, you're pushing it down. That's horseshit in psychology that has not helped anybody since the beginning of psychology. We thought that in psychology, if you cried over something, it meant something had happened. No, it doesn't. It just means you fucking cried. You cry about it every day for the rest of your life if somebody activates it. All you do is stop activating things you don't want activated. You understand? Again, it's the same basic thing. The thing to focus on is building the new, not fighting the old. You're not trying to get rid of your anger or get rid of your sadness or get rid of your grief or get rid of your loneliness. You're activating something else. That's the focus, is what do I see for myself today? Every day you get up and go, what do I see for myself today? What do I want to experience today? Joy, peace, love, it's your decision. And then you activate that. You tell those stories. You read those books. You write those affirmations. You write that scripting. That's the whole idea of we're writing our own story all the time. Keep writing your own story the way you want it written. That your life is a script that you're writing. Make it up a way that feels good to you. This feels good to me. That's what I was talking about my friend who said, if you're being run out of town, get way in front and call it a parade. It's your story. You can tell it the way you want to tell it. It's your story, right? That's I always think about Carrie Fisher saying in Postcards from the Edge, I narrate a life I'm reluctant to live. Well, change the narrative. But she thought the only option I have is to make it funny. But she could have totally changed her story. Now I saw something that her daughter, Billie Lourdes, posted the other day. There was a picture of Carrie, and it was a quote from her mother that said, you can never get famous and successful enough to say, oh, well, I guess I'll just take a nap now. And I was like, that's a bullshit, horrifying thing that's been passed down from Debbie to Carrie and now to you. And I would reject it immediately because it killed both of them, basically. Debbie famously made and lost 3 fortunes with that thought system. Right? 2 husbands who stole them from her, and then she lost her casino and all of this stuff where she kept working to get it back instead of saying, like, what's so great about having a fortune that you have to work yourself to death to have? See, we don't understand sometimes that the idea is, we talked about this last month, your success is your joy. That's what success is. Success is your joy, not your money, not what you've acquired, not what anyone else thinks or says about you. Your success is your joy. So if you've built up 3 businesses, but you've not created a life where you can take a nap and enjoy it, then you're a failure. You have failed in your reason for being, because our reason for being is joy. A Course in Miracles says the kingdom of heaven is joy. It's not joyful. It is joy itself. You understand the difference? The kingdom of heaven is not joyful. The kingdom of heaven is joy. When you're feeling joy, you're in the kingdom of heaven. That's what success is. So if you've acquired a lot of success in worldly terms, but you're not joyful, you've failed. If what you have is nothing to show for anything except your joy, you've succeeded and won. I mean, how many times do we have to just look out at the world and see the people who have all these things and are miserable, miserable, miserable? I saw J-Lo. God love her. I love J-Lo. But what the fuck? Get a grip. I mean, supposedly, she knows this stuff. She had Louise Hay come to her house when she... Anyhow, it doesn't matter. But I saw this thing that J-Lo... Now, J-Lo has a show on NBC. That she's doing this drama show where she's a cop, and she has her show in Vegas, and she has her fashion line, and she's a judge on this new dance show. And so it was said that her little boy had said to her last week, Mommy, would you please schedule an appointment for me next week so that we could spend some time together? What the fuck are you having children for? If your little tiny children have to schedule a fucking appointment with you, because she's not like most mothers in America who are like, I have to work or I'm not going to have enough money to put bread on the table tonight. She's just like, I need to be fucking doing something all the fucking time or I feel worthless. That's what these people are like. I have to keep myself in front of the public eye and be doing a million things all the time, plus I have to be married, plus I have to have babies, plus I have to have this, plus I have to have that, but I have no time to enjoy any of it. That's the American nightmare, not the American dream. That's the American nightmare where no matter how much I have, I still feel like it's not enough. I'm not satisfied. That's failure. That's high-functioning failure. People who have everything have failed if they're not enjoying it, savoring it. That's why I said, we talked before about Donald Trump is somebody who has absolutely perfectly used these principles of how do you create what you want. But totally a failure. I mean, he doesn't even stop tweeting at night. That's not somebody who's sleeping peacefully through the happy night next to a model. If you're tweeting at 2 a.m. because you resent somebody in high school that said something about you, that's not joy, right? You have everything and nothing. Everything and absolutely nothing, because you've not fulfilled your reason for being, which is to just, can you just enjoy? It's so interesting that we live in a place like this and we can complain about it. Right? It's like the second day of heat, it's like, well, now that's enough. Like that there's always just some way that we can just shit on it a little bit, because it's just not absolutely, totally, completely perfect, right, at all times. So it was really looking to see how you stop yourself from feeling joyful. And a lot of times it's because there's an aversion. Like one of the things that I've talked about recently is one of the things that we're doing is increasing our tolerance for joy. Is you're just increasing your tolerance for feeling good. Like the fact that we have statements like, you guys are having too much fun. No one ever stops you and says, you guys are too miserable. Like everybody's like, here's a realist, right? Did any of you watch that show, The New Pope, on HBO? That was some fucked up shit, right? Anyhow, good, interesting though, but that was some fucked up shit. But anyhow, there was a scene where Jude Law, who played this young pope, is talking to one of the bishops or cardinals or whatever, and he says to the cardinal, Jude Law is like very dark, like he's very dark and devoid of any kind of joy at all. And so he's talking to this cardinal, and he says something to the cardinal about, how are you, whatever, and he says, I'm in a good mood. He says, but I'm in a good mood all the time. And the Pope says, I equate a good mood with stupidity. And I was like, most people think that. That's the way that most people think, is somebody who's in a good mood all the time is stupid. Like, well, he's a dummy. He doesn't understand what's really going on. That's why they're so happy. That's why they're in a good mood. I'm like, well, then bring on stupidity, ladies and gentlemen. Just count me among the dummies. Put me in the stupid, because too many times I was so clever and miserable. Very well aware and informed and deeply, debilitatingly depressed. So, and not helpful. I've always said, there's nobody who's saying like, God, I hope that really depressed guy comes over today to help us. Like, nobody's saying that. I hope that really filled with rage guy stops by today with advice. Like, no one's saying that. But people act like that's what's happening. Like, I'm going to take my anger and depression and go help people, right? But the people who want help are thinking like, I hope that happy guy with oranges comes over. I hope the one with cookies and rainbows and unicorns stops by today. Like, not the really pissed off dude. Who knows why this is all so fucked up, right? That's why I will never give money to charities that show animals being tortured. I won't support that fucking commercial. You have to show me what my money is going to do to make happy kittens. I don't want to hear that stupid fucking sad song and these pathetic, starving animals. What I want to see is, your $5 will feed 275 kittens. And then I want to see them kittens torturing a person. I will support that. Right? I've lost my mind. Okay, so we're going to close up here. But I want you to start to think in terms... Oh, wait, I wanted to read this. We're still videoing, right? Okay. This is a great... This is a Reverend Ike affirmation. Money, I'm calling you into my life. I know that you hear me. Right here and right now, I'm telling you, money, you love me. You are welcome in my hands, in my pockets, and in my life all the time. I open my heart and my mind to money in all forms, banknotes, cash, stocks, and bonds. I open my life to money through my loving, appreciating attitude. Money serves me in divine right ways. Money is wonderful stuff, and I let it multiply in my life. Thank you, God in me, for money. So that's a Reverend Ike affirmation. You can do that, though, with anything. The reason it's a powerful thing to do it with money is because people have such judgment against money, that there's something not spiritual about money. Money is wildly spiritual. Money is fabulously spiritual. We would not be here this morning if it weren't for money. It took money for me to buy gas and put it in my car to drive down here. It takes money to run the electricity, to do the lights, to rent this space, for Vision to be here, all of that kind of stuff. So money is God in action. So this sort of turns that whole idea around of not even thinking in terms of, I love money. This says, money loves me. Money is after me. Money is hunting me down like a dog, right? Money sticks to me like fucking static cling. But you can do this with anything. So you can do this with relationships. You can do this with friends. You can do this with jobs. That you want to come from the place of, I am no longer looking for anything. It's looking for me. I'm showing up on the radar, and my good is looking for me. That's the difference between the law of attraction and the law of satisfaction. Too often when we think in terms of the law of attraction, we're still focused on something we don't have, and so that's all we're getting more of, is not having. When you think in terms of the law of satisfaction, you're thinking in terms of already having. We want to be constantly in the state of already having. That's what this woman did when she started packing her boxes. She was living from the place of, the place is already there, we just haven't met yet. That's how I went. Do you understand that? The place is already created in consciousness. We just haven't met yet, so I'm preparing. That's what this woman said. She started acting like she was pregnant before she was. She started eating as if she was pregnant. She started taking care of herself as if she was pregnant. That you start to move into the consciousness of, it's already there. That's many, I remember hearing Marianne tell a story about Jesse Jackson. And she said, I had seen this interview, this was in the 1980s, and she said, I saw an interview with Jesse Jackson where somebody asked him, do you really think that you could be president? And he said, and his answer was, more and more I think in terms of being presidential. More and more I think in terms of being presidential. Now, what that did was, even though that was in the 1980s, even though he was not the person who moved into that spot, the fact that he, and even before him, I don't know how many of you remember Shirley Chisholm, African-American woman who ran for president, that all of those people who were just throwing their hat into the ring were already sowing the seeds in Barack Obama. So it's not something that actually has to have happened in order for you to move into that place. But even just having something that gives you the idea of possibility. That it's possible at 75, after not being in a relationship for 40 years, to meet the love of your life. That it's possible to start a brand new business at 67. That it's possible to, whatever it is, that it's possible to heal a disease that nobody else on the planet of Earth has ever healed so far. That it's possible for you to be the first person who spontaneously heals from such and such a disease. That beginning of that thinking in that way, and to actually start preparing your consciousness for it. And instead of, as he says, talking yourself out of it. Too many times we talk ourselves out of it. You have to be reasonable. You have to do. All we really want to do is not get attached. We want to go ahead and have the desire, but without the attachment. In other words, I want this, but I'm going to be happy even if it doesn't happen. You understand? You can say, I want to get married and have a baby, but I'm going to be happy whether I do or not, but I'm going for it 100%. And I'm going to go for it right up until I either die or don't want to go for it anymore. But that's not going to stop me from being happy now. The attachment is, and if I don't get it, I'll be miserable. I'll be miserable until I get it, and if I don't get it, then I will just continue being miserable. That's attachment. See, we don't want attachment. We want desire and happy now. Happy in our now, reaching for more. Happy in our now, reaching for more. Happy in our now, reaching for more. Let me just pause at this as we go. What are you being reasonable about? Stop it. I want you to just think about that in the next month. What are you looking at rationally? Stop it. Well, I can reasonably expect that I might be able to pay off this much of my debt in the next, given the fact that I da-da-da-da. Fuck you. We live in a limitless universe that is forever cranking out abundance, looking for a place to land. Money is looking for a place to land. Money is looking for a place to land. It's flying through the fucking air. That money has never been so intangible as it is right now because it's mostly electronic. Used to be just a metaphor that we would say it's floating through the air. Now it's literally fucking floating through this room. Electronically, money is transferring billions of dollars like through the ethers across here. What you need to do is just say, open to receive. Got the PayPal account right here, motherfucker. Money loves me. Here's the number. I'm open to receive. It is easy to give to me, right? That you just start, I'm open to receive. I'm open to receive. I'm open to receive. And it literally is a shift in consciousness. I've been talking about this before, that you just shift your story and the storyline changes. If you shift your storyline in your mind, the storyline out here starts to change to line up with that story. So start to tell a better story. Start to shift your paradigm instead of just trying to change a thought or two. Just trying to have an affirmation or two. Start to think in terms of a whole different paradigm for my life, for what's possible for me. That whole affirmation of lots can happen that covers so many things. That means you don't know how, but lots can happen. Lots can happen. One of my dreams is to have a center, just a classroom like in an office building in West Hollywood that I could seat like 30 to 50 people. And so once I started thinking in terms of that, then once you change that storyline, then you'll start to see things that help you move into that. One of the things that happened to me, once I started thinking that, because I don't know what it's like here in San Diego, but in Los Angeles, they're just building places endlessly all the time. And I'm always thinking, who the fuck's moving into these places? Like, what's going in there? Like, I don't know what's going in there. Not just the apartments, but like all the corporate buildings. And you think, there's nothing in half the ones that are here anyhow, and they just keep building more, and they're just all empty. So I started thinking, well, someone should just give me one of those. I mean, it's going to sit there empty anyhow, so why don't they just put me in there? Like, I keep it nice. So then I was watching... Right, I would take care of it. Then I was watching, I don't know if any of you have watched the Leah Remini show on Scientology, the documentary on Scientology. One of the things that I saw, now this is crazy, because Scientology is, let me just say, allegedly, because Scientology is a church and they have nonprofit status, you cannot just take in enormous amounts of money and have it sitting in a bank account, because then you've made a profit. So you have to be doing something with it. The money has to be active and being used, or you are not a nonprofit anymore. So one of the things that they do, and here's how they, again, this is how you can like tell things in weird ways, is they will tell people in the churches, they'll say, we're the fastest growing religion in the world. And so you assume that means they're getting more members. That's not what they mean. What they mean is we have the most property and we keep buying more property. Because they're using their square footage as their barometer of growth. But the reason they're buying all these buildings is so that they are doing something with all the money that's coming in. Because they can't also just pay enormous salaries to people. Like all of that stuff is under federal jurisdiction and stuff. So they just keep buying these buildings. So one of the things that they showed in this special was they had like rooms this size or twice this size that were outfitted with state-of-the-art, like shit that puts this to shame, of like the most new, brand new electronic state-of-the-art and live streaming and da-da-da-da with gorgeous seats and that no one has ever or will ever be in. You understand? Because they have to do something with the money and act like they're doing stuff with it. So they're just these huge empty halls that with all the equipment and all the audio visual and nothing ever goes on there. No one will ever be in there. And then they just build another building next to it and another building, another building. And I was like, well, I'll take one of those. Right? You just go. But see, until you have the idea of what you want to create, just like this woman, then you start to see the reflections of all kinds of possibilities. Because left to yourself, you're just thinking, well, I need this much money and this kind of business insurance to rent this kind of a space that's going to be da-da-da. But if you just go, I don't fucking know how. It's a world full of buildings with empty rooms, and somebody is going to just take a liking to me and say, you know what? Or whatever. So you just start the vision of, if I can see it, I can be it. Not if I can see it, then I can plan it and make it happen and strategize it and figure it out and take all the right action steps and get people behind me and so have a vote on it and maybe legislate it, change the laws in the country, right? No, if you can see it, you can be it. You don't have to know how. The vibration, as you keep lifting your vibration, then you come in contact with all the people and all the resources and all the circumstances that are on that frequency. Right? All right. I could go on forever, so let's stop. Once again, we close our eyes. Oh, one more affirmation. No, this is good. I have a lavish, steady, dependable income consistent with integrity and mutual benefit. I have a lavish, steady, dependable income consistent with integrity and mutual benefit. I have a lavish, steady, dependable income consistent with integrity and mutual benefit. You could make that about anything. You could make that about a marriage. You could make that about the health of your body. You could make that about anything. But what you want to do is keep aligning your thoughts and what you're saying and what you're feeling and what you're thinking so that they're not just these isolated affirmations. The more you put them together, the more they become an entire movie. If you're just saying an affirmation every now and then you're still trying to put new wine into old wineskins. But if you're connecting them all over and over and over as the day goes on, then that's changing your whole paradigm and how you live your life. Just like, when this woman sent me this email about this house, it was like, what the fuck? It's just one thing after another, wasn't it? And we have this, and someone gave us this thing for free, and then we all have our own bedrooms, we all have our own bathrooms, we all have this, and it's less money than we were paying before. It's like, holy shit, lady. You deserve this. This is amazing. And you didn't lift a fucking finger. They didn't lift a finger. Do you understand that? They didn't lift a finger. They didn't make a phone call. They didn't do jack shit. People came to them. Oh, then her boss said, we're going to let you work from home. And then my friend said, oh, we're closing this thing, but we're turning it into a rental unit. Do you want to look at it? And then they didn't do a fucking action step. They didn't have a single action step. All they did was prepare. That's all they did. They prepared. They packed boxes, had no fucking idea when or where they're going to move. We're just preparing. Our fabulous home's being made. Our wonderful, fabulous home is being prepared for us. She didn't even tell her girlfriend why she was packing up shit. And her girlfriend was like, finally, I can get rid of this crap. Right? It's not about figuring it all out. It's about relax the mind, open to receive. Go downstream. The path of least resistance. All right, let's try again to leave. I'm going to try again to leave this room. Once again, we close our eyes. Take a deep breath. relaxing into that downstream movement. No struggle, no effort, no striving. Not making anything happen, not preventing anything from happening. But letting yourself imagine a life of perfect joy and satisfaction. If I can see it, I can be it. If I can see myself healthy and whole and happy, if I can see myself abundant, if I can see myself successful, if I can see myself thriving, if I can see myself loving and being loved, if I can see myself traveling, if I want to travel, being at home in a home that I love, if I can see myself debt-free, if I can see myself as whatever, then I can be it. So move into your divine imagination now and see yourself living the life you choose. It may be exactly the life you have right now. See yourself savoring it. Know that you deserve it, that you created it through your consciousness and alignment with Source, that you don't have to ever struggle it into place or push it or force it into place. You relax it into place. You vision it into place. You speak it into place by deciding it's the life you want. So we give thanks for this joining and this alignment this morning for our greater good. We offer now to this divine presence within us, this infinite wisdom, this God source, our hands and our feet and our voices, asking, where would you have us go? What would you have us do and say, and to whom? We remember now, as always, the way that we will know love and the way that we will feel love is by this perfect love moving through us to the world around us. For this we are thankful, and together we all say, amen. You might want to stretch a little bit. jacobglass.com is my website. Everything is on there if you want to get CDs or MP3s of the talks. They're $25 donation. You can get them on the website through PayPal, or there are envelopes here. You can mail in a check. You can't do it through me here, though. You have to mail it in. I'm here the second Saturday of every month. And go have a fabulous, wonderful spring. Remember, this spring's theme is, if I can see it, I can be it. If I come back and ask you next month what the theme is, will you be able to remember it? Then you may go.